Yes, this is the Cathouse Hollywood podcast, a new one. I guess that depends on when you're listening to it. If you're listening to it April 23rd, 2025, yes, this is a new one. This is probably the most Cathouse Hollywood podcast ever released. But I know a lot of you wanted to know about an evening that I had mentioned several months ago, and I still get asked about it. But I never delivered the answer until now. This is the Cathouse Hollywood podcast. Coming to you from the Cathouse South Studios in Race City, USA. Welcome back to the Cathouse Hollywood podcast. I am Riki Rachtman. This is a place where we go back to rock's most decadent era and share what it was really like. No, not from stories of journalists telling you what they heard from someone else who heard that from someone else who had read it on the net. No, we tell you what it was really like with the people that were there. It might be someone from one of the biggest bands or the girl that worked the coat check. It doesn't matter because at the Cathouse, we were all rock stars. That being said, this episode is none of those things really. This tale takes place not in the 80s or even 90s. Okay, the backstory's in the 90s, but what we have is a story of me meeting Henry Rollins. But it is also proof that there are times that you know more about me than I myself know. This episode of the Cathouse Hollywood podcast is sponsored by Harley Davidson. Check out the Harley Davidson Pan America. It is the bike I ride. It is the motorcycle I will be riding during Riki's Ride 25. The reason I chose the Pan America is this bike is going to be incredible on Tail of the Dragon, and it is also going to be incredible on the dirt roads of the Yukons and Alaska, because that's what I'm doing this summer. This podcast is also brought to you from Rambler sparkling water, made right here in the USA. I'm telling you, I drink Rambler every single day. No, really. Rambler's limestone mineral blend is available in original lemon lime, grapefruit, not grapefruit, but it is a grapefruit. Jeez. Satsuma, blackberry, and now wild cherry. The people at Rambler are really cool people, and I'm going to be doing some exclusive content during my ride that you can find on their socials. So why don't you give them a follow at Rambler Austin, because they're from Austin, Texas. And check out their store finder on their website to find a store near you and drink Rambler, because it tastes good and it's good for you, and they're my friends. I'm so damn lucky to have met practically anybody I ever wanted to meet, especially in rock and roll. Even before Headbangers Ball, I knew some of the biggest names in hard rock before they were the biggest names. I mean, where do I begin with the list of people that came to the Cathouse, other than the usual suspects that you already know? Aerosmith, Billy Gibbons, David Bowie, Robert Downey Jr., Robert Plant, Ozzy. Honestly, the list is pretty impressive, and it is a long list, but I never really thought about how cool it was. Okay, when I was standing there and I saw Robert Plant at the bar at the Cathouse, that was pretty cool. Of course, I didn't even mention the Cathouse regulars because bands like Guns N' Roses were my friends before they even had a record deal. Even as a child, I was around rock and roll. I didn't live with my father, but some of the times that I saw him, we would occasionally go to shows because he managed a few rock bands. I guess I've been around some famous people my whole life, but I never really thought about it because that was just my life. I worked in wrestling for a few years. I don't know how many of you knew that I worked for WCW, and I met a lot of the wrestlers. I also worked 20 years in NASCAR. As a fan, I met my favorite drivers, which was a big deal for me. I met Dale Earnhardt. I met Richard Petty. I met the Allisons. The 5 years on Headbangers Ball, I worked with everyone. I think Brian Johnson and Angus Young from AC/DC was a big deal. I have been very lucky, and I do not take it for granted. Now, I want to talk about the music business, changing the subjects. Talk about the music business. I want to talk about the music business in the last 10, 20 years. As we know, there aren't any record sales, so it's very hard for bands to make money. So they tour. When they're on the road, some of the venues take a cut of the merchandise, which, by the way, when a venue takes a cut of a band's merchandise, I think it's bullshit. For bands to make money, they have to be creative. And a lot of bands offer fan experiences in the way of the meet and greet. And it's a really cool way for fans to get closer to the bands. And it's also kind of cool because the bands make a few extra bucks. When I went on tour with my storytelling show, One Foot in the Gutter, I even did pre-show meet and greets, but I never called it that. I called it VFI, which meant very fucking important. It'd be like 10, maybe 15 people. We'd meet before the show. We'd hang out, take pictures, sign some stuff, ask questions. And truth be told, I had a blast doing these. I actually made friends with many of the VFIs. There is no way I could have toured with OFITG without making money from the meet and greets. I even did a few shows. What did I call it? Did I call it? Oh, Join the Road Crew. And they'd show up and they'd have lunch with me and Leah and Cathouse Karen or Paul or Joanna or Michael. And I'd buy the lunch. And then they'd help me set up on stage, or like my roadie kind of. But look, there really wasn't anything to set up because I don't have any instruments or anything like that. I can honestly say it was a very positive experience for me and hopefully for them as well. A lot of these people turned out to be friends. Now we're talking about meet and greets, and now I want to kind of reverse the roles. Would I, Riki Rachtman, ever go to a band's meet and greet as a fan? I would say no. But there was that one time I went as a fan and I did a whole meet and greet with who? Henry Rollins. Most of you know that I grew up listening to a lot of punk rock as a young teen. I saw the band Black Flag with Keith Moore singing and with my favorite singer, Ron Reyes. Henry Rollins was the singer of Black Flag starting in 1981, but I don't recall if I ever saw him in the band, but I did like his music with Black Flag. In 1994, Henry, as a solo artist, released the song Liar. Do you remember this song? It's a really cool video and really cool. 'Cause I'm a liar. Why do I do that? It doesn't sound anything like that. During that time, I started hearing about Henry Rollins doing spoken word. And he had been doing it, I guess, probably since the late 80s. I knew that Henry Rollins had been doing these spoken word shows, but when I thought spoken word, I thought like it was like poetry reading or something like that. People on stage like, the red balloon mocks me with its silence. What does that mean? But that's what I thought spoken word was. I didn't know that it was somebody hopping on stage and telling stories. And I kept hearing from friends of mine that would go to these shows of Henry Rollins and think that they were so cool. I know that Ace Von Johnson went to 2 nights in a row. And of course, I asked him, does he sing a Black Flag song or maybe break into Liar or anything like that? He said, no, he just talks. I would always hear stories about Henry Rollins and his spoken word, and I would see clips of it online, and I was really impressed. I'd watch him on talk shows, and I was becoming a bigger fan of the spoken word Henry Rollins than the Black Flag Henry. I thought to myself, that would be a really cool thing to do. Get on stage and tell stories. You know, I've been wanting to write a book for so long, people. But if I just write down some stories, I can get up on stage and telling them in front of people and doing a spoken word show that I would call One Foot in the Gutter. There's another reason I started doing the speaking shows, but I'll share that in another podcast because it kind of throws shade on a rock star that you know, and I don't want to do it in this episode, but I will do it in one soon. So let's skip a few years. I am on tour. I'm doing my own spoken word show. And many of the shows were selling out. I even did 4 shows in Australia. I think 46 shows. All along, I was very impressed and inspired by Henry Rollins. I looked at what he did, and I wanted to do it, even though the subject matter of my shows, of course, was quite different, but still the same concept, telling stories about our lives. One day, my wife gives me a very thoughtful present. Not only tickets to finally go see Henry Rollins' spoken word show, but a meet and greet. A very, very cool gift. I could see how the pro does it. I could analyze Henry, see what he does, take mental notes. Oh yeah, and then I had the Henry Rollins meet and greet. Truth is, as excited as I was, my rock star ego was thinking, you're going to do a meet and greet and not be the one doing the meet and greeting? You're going to be waiting in line and doing the meet and greet like a regular fan? I probably felt like that for less than a minute because I am a fan. I always have been a fan. I think I'm the furthest thing from those typical rock stars. Oh, wait. I have to wait in line for the meet and greet? Okay, I did get mad at myself for even thinking that I was too good to wait in line for the meet and greet, because I'm not. So a week or so had passed after she gave me the gift, and I went online to tell my friends, you, the Patreon members, the people that listen to this podcast, to say that I was going to see Rollins and do my first meet and greet from the other side as a fan. A few people asked if I had ever met Henry Rollins before. And of course, I said I had never been to his spoken word and I had never seen or met Henry Rollins before. I reiterated that my Black Flag fandom was pre-Rollins and our paths never really crossed. But I was really excited to meet him. I liked his Black Flag stuff and his acting as well. Henry, of course, the master of spoken word, and I'm just starting out. So yeah, I want to meet him, but unfortunately, I never had. I want to bring up 2 points right now. You out there, you guys are good. You have great memories, especially when it comes to Headbangers Ball. Many of you remember things that I do not. I, on the other hand, am really bad with remembering things. And as I get older, I know I'm getting worse. Someone once told me that our brains can only hold so much memories. And then when we get new ones, they replace the old ones. I don't know if that's true because I can't remember a television show that I saw last week. But for some reason, I can remember a lot of new wave music. I don't know why. A few people posted on my Facebook page that I had met Henry Rollins, and I assured them, no, it didn't happen. I would have remembered that. And there were more comments saying, no, you met Henry Rollins. He was on Headbangers Ball. And I explained, no, Henry Rollins was probably on 120 Minutes, and I had never met him. And then somebody sent me this.
On the ball, we've got Henry Rollins, who has been on basically every MTV show so far, except for Headbangers Ball. Because you've been doing all this stuff on MTV for a while now.
I do a lot of things on MTV that you don't even know about. I take care of staples, paper clips, pencil sharpening. I do some of the craft services stuff. They let me clean the coffee machine every once in a while.
Catering by Henry Rollins on Headbangers Ball.
Well, I get to carry the catering in from the van outside, but they don't let me touch anything. They just let me turn the stuff off and on. I'm handy with Xerox too, and sometimes they play my videos.
What, in exchange for? Yeah,
they make me work though.
I watched the clip like I was watching it for the very first time. I had no recollection of this at all. Almost kind of scary, right? But there I was, sitting and talking to Henry Rollins.
If I do spoken word performances that aren't me up there yelling and sweating, they're really funny. It's a different mindset. That's why I write books. That's why I do different stuff, to get different angles of expression out.
Now, I went to, when my band was playing at a thing where you did your spoken word, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be some kind of poetry thing, and I wasn't really sure what the whole spoken word thing was. And it was just watching you talk, and it was about something about Christmas, I think. This was a couple years back at a benefit, and it was like, wow. I mean, is there something that you would write down as a spoken word and say, this would be better as a song?
The ideas for a song is hard. The lyrics are easy. Words will gravitate to a good idea, no problem. You just have to wait and let them come. Spoken word ideas, that usually I go on stage with are more longer story ideas.
So I guess I had met Henry Rollins, but did I just say that I had seen Henry Rollins perform before? That's an interesting story that I'm going to save for the very end because it's pretty crazy when you hear who's involved. So I had established that even though I had no recollection of meeting Henry Rollins, I actually had, and it was an interview on Headbangers Ball, like most of you told me. I didn't remember him. There was no way Henry would remember that day in 1994. So it's October 9th, 2023. Leah and I are driving to Asheville, North Carolina. And I know it sounds weird, but I was a little nervous. I mean, you guys know all the people that I've met. Every hard rock and metal band, then people like the Beastie Boys, Ice-T, any single NASCAR driver, Stone Cold, Steve Austin, Triple H, and the whole Quentin Tarantino a few times, Colin Powell, Jay Leno. I'm forgetting some, but I'm just remembering, which is a miracle right now. So we show up to the venue a few hours early, and we waited in line with about 100 or so people. Of the 100 people, 2 people recognized me and asked what I was doing waiting in the line. And I answered proudly, I'm doing a Henry Rollins meet and greet. And I waited in line. And here's how they do the Henry Rollins meet and greet. You are allowed to get in early, so you get to pick your seat. You get a signed laminated pass, and then after the show, there's like an intimate Q&A with about 70 or so people. Then you get called up one by one. You get to take a picture with Henry Rollins, and then you go home. He charges $165 for that, and it doesn't include the ticket. But to be honest, I felt that it was more than fair. We got to go in before everybody took their seats, and I didn't sit in the front row. I made sure that I sat in like the third row center. I've been watching bands backstage that have done meet and greets. And I watched and listened, and you would be surprised how many fans go to these rock stars during the meet and greet, and while getting their autograph, say something like, hey, do you remember me? I saw you in Orlando 5 years ago, and I gave you the horns, and you nodded at me. Some variation of that, and they hear it over and over and over again. When I finally meet Henry Rollins, there's no way I'm going to do that. So we take our seat. I watch his spoken word show, which was way over 2.5 hours, and it was really, really good. I mean, he's so good at what he does, and I'll admit it, I want to do the same thing. I wish I could pick his brain for advice, but there's no way I'm going to be able to do that because all these people are in line before me and after me to get their picture. I waited in line with Leah, and I was actually a little nervous. I mean, come on, not only did he sing for one of the most important punk rock bands in Los Angeles, but he is doing what I want to do, and he's really good at it. I kept telling myself, okay, Riki, when you go up there, don't say something stupid like, hey, remember that time? And I think I know how some of you feel when you do meet and greets now. There is a part of my ego that kept telling me that I would walk to him and he would say, hey, Riki Rachtman. It was my turn. I walked up apprehensively, stood next to Henry Rollins, and posed for a photo, just like he had been doing 30 times before that. Leah walked up, and then Leah, Henry Rollins, and myself took a picture. I just looked straight ahead at the camera. Then when we were done, I started to walk away, and I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but you were on my show Headbangers Ball. I felt stupid for saying this, and I started to walk away. Then Henry Rollins said, oh, you live here now? I think he remembered me, but my feet were already walking away. I mean, that was probably my opportunity to say, well, yes, I do. But there were all these other people waiting in line to take pictures of him. That was it. I got to tell you about the time I had seen him do a little bit of his show. This is another story that I briefly recall. I had been in my band Battery Club, and I started that band with Roger Ramjet, and there was also a bunch of musicians from other bands like Social Distortion, D.I., Dag Nasty, and more. And there was also an all-girl band called the Lame Flames playing, and I was their manager for a short time, and maybe that's how I kind of weaseled my way in to play on this benefit. Right before we took the stage, Henry Rollins did a little storytelling about Christmas. So I guess I had watched a little bit of the show, but I also know that I was nervous before going on stage with Battery Club I could kind of say Henry Rollins opened up for me, right? So Battery Club played 3 songs, and right after we played, there was an acoustic set featuring River Phoenix. Unfortunately, he died not long after that. And a matter of fact, it was right down the street from the Roxy in front of the Viper Room. Damn, that isn't a good way to end this Cathouse Hollywood podcast. Okay, I'll tell you this. The next episode of the Cathouse Hollywood podcast goes back to the 80s with guest Tracy Guns from the band LA Guns. And he shares with us why he feared for his life playing with Guns N' Roses. I don't know when you are listening to this podcast, but for the summer of 2025, I am going to be on my Harley-Davidson Pan America, riding everywhere from Florida to Alaska, 13,000 miles. And Leah Vendetta is going to be on the back for most of that ride. I'm going to be raising money for 988, the suicide prevention hotline. To donate and find out more, go to lostramblers.com. That's lostramblers.com. The website was launched like yesterday, so there's not a lot up there, but I'm going to post more and ways that you can follow my ride and donate. Holy fuck, how did I forget to tell you about CathouseHollywood.com? A place you can buy Cathouse shirts and Headbangers Ball shirts and Cathouse coffee. And please, by all means, join the Rack Pack, my Patreon, at patreon.com/Riki Rachtman. I want to give a shout out to some of the Patreon members right now, like Angela McCabe, Barnaby Mortensen. Thank you, Barney, for hooking that whole thing up in New Bedford. That was so much fun. Gail Dunmeyer, my God, what would Ricky's ride be without Gail? Great friend, great supporter. Jill Eckhart, Marilyn Tipconic, Missy Alley, Ram Rob Strotman, Stephen Black, The Maz, Don Graham, Derek Blake Stone, Doc, Dwayne Loven, Holly Snyder. We love you, Holly. The great Janice Head, Jennifer Schneider-Coleman, Jody, Jodis Maximus, Jose Terena, Catherine Blanco, Lee Julke, Matthew Metal Will, Mickey Littleton, Rachel K., Stephanie Rogue, Seven Thorn, Shelby Benson. Oh, I didn't even know Ace Fun Johnson was a member of my Patreon. In any case, thank you for letting me thank all those people. And next week on the Cathouse Hollywood podcast, for real, we're going back to the Cathouse. I'm going to give you the sleaze and the debauchery, the raunch and roll, the rhythm and booze. That's on the next Cathouse Hollywood podcast.